Hey everybody, welcome on board my channel. My name is Joe, and as you probably know by now, I'm a real-world 737-800 pilot, and at the present moment we're in cruise towards Krakow in Poland. I just froze it so I can brief you on how and what we will be doing today. So yeah, in this video I'll be showing you how to anticipate high energy approaches and how to make a proper descent planning like we do in real life. This video will be split in two parts, the first one being basics of descent management and anticipation of possible shortcuts, and on this second part I'll try to show you how to correct it in case we end up in a high energy situation, because for example the ATC kept us high and fast, or maybe we have terrain preventing us from descending on our profile, and so on. All this while, of course, we are getting closer to the terminal area where you want to be slowing down in order to prepare for your approach. It's quite a little bit tricky and a little bit demanding, especially when you're starting your career as an airline pilot, and this is why today I think it's gonna be quite an interesting topic to talk about. So let's get started. Alright, so here we are in the cruise. Let me explain you what we are doing at the present time. We are at cruise flight level 360 towards our point Lenov, which is the first point of the arrival that we are supposed to do in Krakow. That will be the Lenov 3 Golf arrival, and our ground speed is around 400 knots. Okay, so we just keep it in mind for the time being. Good thing that you can do now is you will say, okay, it's time to start the briefing and the descent planning. So at that time you would probably start giving the controls to the other pilots so that you can start setting up your plane, your FMC, and start briefing the approach as well. All of this is part of the threats and errors management, which is very important when we are flying this kind of planes. So let's say that now the other pilot has the controls. Okay, of course the plane is in freeze mode, so that we don't have to worry about it going towards our top of descent, and we'll just carry on from here. So now we are here with the map mode here on the ND, but it's not really useful for us. So what I would suggest is that we go on the plan mode to see exactly what we are about to do. So if you go on plan mode, basically instead of having route data here, you have step. Okay, so look, if we go back on the map, it's route data, not very useful for us, but now we want to put step. Okay, so that when you put step and you decrease your range, it will tell you everything that you are supposed to do. So after Lenov, point by point you can verify. You will go to AirCap, then Kilo 541, then we'll do this kind of snaky arrival here down to the runway. Now the questions I'm about to ask you is, do you think that this is something that will happen? Absolutely not. So unless the ATC is very busy and the area is full of planes and everybody want to go in Krakow, there is high chances that we will receive some shortcuts. Okay, and in average we always, well, I mean, we very often receive shortcuts to a 10-mile final, so we can expect this point, which actually is this point called Ofuk. Yeah, this name is a little bit funny, I know, but this is the 10 miles final point in the Krakow approach for the runway 25. So let's call it 10 miles final. Okay, and basically what do you think we could expect as a shortcut here? As well, as you can see, this arrival I put Lenov, but in reality we should have had another arrival coming from here, but I did it on purpose so that we can try to do different exercises here. So what I would probably say, guys, is that what we can expect would be, let's say initially, in case we have to go all the way down to Lenov, we can expect from this point AirCap to a 10 miles final. Okay, so we don't have to do this whole snaky arrival. Okay, so if we put then the next point, which is this one, we put it there to AirCap, that will tell us exactly, you know, what we are planning to do, what we are anticipating basically. However, here at AirCap you see that we have an altitude constraint, which is flight level 100 or above, and of course we have to respect this, because maybe it's because of the rain, maybe it's because of a restricted area, whatever, you know. However, here we cannot see exactly what VNAV has planned us to be, because at the moment it's hidden by this flight level 100 or above. But if you delete it, if you delete it here, you will see exactly at what altitude VNAV has calculated that you should be while having this shortcut. Okay, now the first thing before deleting it, I would like us to calculate it mentally. So for this we'll go through different rules of thumb, and basically if you want to maintain a 3-degree glide path, which is the glide that we want to be on when descending on the 737, basically you will want to have a vertical speed which equals to 5 times your ground speed. So here we have 400 knots. Basically you multiply this by 5, so if you want to be descending on a 3-degree glide path, you will have to descend at 400 times 5, 2000 feet per minute. So that's very important. Now the next question to ask ourselves is when do we start the descent? Because if you start descending now, for sure you will hit the ground sooner than expected, and that's not what you want. So if you want to know when you will start the descent, and by when I mean at what distance from the threshold, basically you have to calculate these 2 digits, you put them, okay, you take these 2 digits and you multiply them by 3. So here that would be 36 times 3, that would make 108 nautical miles. So 108 nautical miles from the touchdown point, basically you'll just start descending. However, today in Krakow we have around 1200 feet of aerodrome elevation, so you want to be descending. Basically you want to be losing 35,000 feet, not 36,000 feet. So in that case, if you want to be very precise, instead of multiplying 36 by 3, you multiply 35 by 3, that will make you 105 miles. So for this you can now go on the runway, on the fixed page, you put runway 25 and then you put /105. That will tell you that at 105 miles from the airport you should start descending. And if you increase the range, you'll see soon enough the rings, and this is this ring here. So when you reach this ring, you know that that's the point at which you would like to start descending for your approach. Of course, this is only applicable if you're going in a straight line. Usually if you're not going in a straight line, like for example today, then in that case it's gonna be better to just continue a little bit further. But as a safety measure, it's always better to be a bit too low than too high, of course, as long as you are not close to terrain, because it's much easier to recover. So just keep this in mind. 105, you can put it as a reminder. Then this 10 miles final here, I will show you with the plan mode. It's very easy as well. It's a very nice feature that we use. Basically is because at 10 miles we want to be at 3000 feet and 200 knots and flaps 1. So basically you do 3, 2, 1. Okay, 10 miles, 3000 feet, 200 knots, flaps 1. That will keep you out of troubles most of the time, and you will be safe with that. Then the next ring I have is 4 miles. And at 4 miles here is just the point at which we start putting the gear down in real life, that we start configuring the plane for the landing. But because it's a sim, you know, when I land usually I do it at 6 or 7 miles to allow me a little bit more time, because I have no other pilot to help me on this case. So here I will leave it at 4 miles anyway, because I'm not planning to land today. We're just doing a small tutorials on how to anticipate and how to plan our descent like we do in real life. Okay, so this was about it, and that's it. So now we said that basically it's 3 times the altitude. Okay, so that equals basically at 300 miles, 300 feet per nautical mile. Okay, so here we can cross-check basically at what altitude. We can try to calculate it ourselves at what altitude we should be at AirCap, in case we have this shortcut. But now let's first calculate at what altitude VNAV has calculated that we should be at AirCap if we don't move anything from the FMC, because VNAV is not anticipating the shortcuts for us. VNAV will just fly everything as planned. So if you don't change anything, then for sure VNAV has already planned you a certain altitude which is hidden below the behind this flight level 100 or above here, and you want to know at what altitude VNAV has calculated that you should be at this point, which is AirCap. In order to do that, it's very easy. Basically we can check here. Basically we have 258 miles from the destination. Okay, so you can put 258, and then you see that if you go on next page, you want to have you still have 170 miles to Lenov and then 15 miles to Erkep, so that's 185 miles. So you know that if you subtract these 258 miles from 185 miles, that's the distance remaining from Erkep to the runway, basically. Okay, so you want to see how much distance you have from Erkep to the runway. We could have calculated all this point by points, but it's gonna be easier like I do. So 258 minus 185, and that is making you, I'm calculating as well, 73 nautical miles. Okay, so now what do you think the altitude should be over Erkep? Well, 73 times 3. If we do 73 times 3 and then times 100, of course, it's gonna be 21,900 feet. Now keep in mind that in Krakow we have this 1,000 feet of aerodrome elevation, so you want to add an extra 1,000 feet extra to this. That's making 20 my mistake, I did so that's making you 22,900 feet. Okay, so this is what we think, at least we calculated mentally with our own rules of thumb, at what altitude VNAV should have calculated us to be, and you will see that it should not be very far from this. These are very simple calculations, yet pretty useful and pretty precise. So let's delete it and you'll see we set 22,900 feet and boom, we have 22,700 feet. So as you can see, only 200 feet difference, which is very accurate for what we are doing. And even if it's not, you know, not exactly precise, it's gonna be very easy to correct 200 feet too high or too low or whatever, you know. But it's at least you know what to expect. Okay, so now it's gonna be 22,700 feet. You erase it because you don't want to remove this flight level 100 or above. However, now we can put what we are expecting. So this 10 miles final point, we put it just after Erkep, and you see that this is what now you want to be doing. Okay, so it's there in the dashed white line, and now you have this direct. Now what else? You want to check, for example, how much distance is left. So now it's gonna be 241 miles. 241 minus 185 as it was before, that leaves you 56 miles. Okay, so 56 miles, if you multiply it by 3 again and then by 100 again, it's gonna be 16,800 feet. And if you check this now, should be more or less the same. Sorry for this. So now we go to Erkep and you see 16,900 feet. Of course, I'd suggest that initially you can start by reducing or adding the airport elevation, but then, you know, the closer you get to the arrival, basically I'd suggest that you just do as simple as possible. You don't start tweaking with the elevation, because anyway it's always better to be a bit too low, because then you'll need to decelerate a little bit for the flaps as well. So here Erkep flight level 169, and we had calculated flight level 162, so you see that we are definitely not far and that our calculations are working. So now, what can we do actually to keep the VNAV telling us that we have to be at flight level 169 and instead of being at flight level 228? That's a big difference, guys. That's around 6,000 feet difference. And 6,000 feet, if you are getting too close to the airport, is almost impossible to correct, basically. So unless you take tremendous measures, okay, to counteract this. But this is not ideal, and we don't want to be doing this, especially now that we are in the planning phase, and that we can definitely anticipate all of this. Now another thing is that if you're getting too low because for whatever reason the ATC is not giving you any of these shortcuts, it's super easy. You just press vertical speed and you reduce your rate of descent. Or if you keep VNAV path will automatically keep your plane at 1000 feet per minute, so you know that you will until you reach back your original path. So there will be absolutely no problem for that. It's gonna be much easier to go back onto your profile. As well, as I said, always keep an eye on the terrain and make sure that you're not going below the MSA. But as a general rule, it's always better to be a bit too low than too high, especially in these airliners. So here we keep flight level 169 in mind and we erase it, because if we execute it now we will get rid of all these points, and we don't want, because we're not sure just yet that the ATC will give us the shortcut, okay? This is just us being optimistic and being very vigilant, but we are not sure that we will have this shortcut. So we just keep this AirCap flight level 169 in mind, and then we press erase. Now you still have all these points here, but over AirCap you want to put flight level 169. What if you put 169? Is it gonna be a problem for your altitude constraint? Definitely not, because you will still be over flight level 169, over flight level 100 or above, sorry. However, that will keep you out of trouble, because if you leave it like this, it will just make you be at AirCap at flight level 228. And we want to be at 169. So what do? We tell VNAV to plan the descent so that we are at flight level 169. Another thing I'll just do now before, check this top of descent here. What do you think VNAV will just do? Because your rate of descent will be the same. It will be 5 times your ground speed, so that you keep a 3-degree glide path until flight level 169. So if you want to be descending and be over AirCap at flight level 169 instead of flight level 228, you will have to descend earlier. So now, just before I put it here, just watch the top of descent here. Keep an eye on it. I will execute, and you'll see that the top of descent will come a little bit earlier. And you see, it came exactly earlier. And about how many miles? About 20 miles. 20 miles times 3 is 6,000 feet. So you see that this is actually working, okay? So now we can actually execute it, flight level 169 over AirCap. And here you go. You have already anticipated one part of the approach. Good. So now what else can we do? Do you think this is gonna be the only shortcut that we will have over for this approach? No, I don't think so, because here we are coming from this direction, we're going the opposite way of the airport, so I'm not expecting that we are going to go to Lenov. Most probably, if we are very optimistic, we could have a shortcut from somewhere here to the 10 miles final. Okay? However, here we don't have the luxury of having a point anymore, because there is nothing in between us and Lenov at that present time. So the only thing we can do is to set actually a basically a custom waypoint. Okay, so in order to do that, when do you think that we may have this this shortcut? I'd say around 60 to 70 miles from Lenov point. So let's put Lenov minus 70 miles, and that's gonna be like a big shortcut like this. So it's a very big one, and if you don't anticipate, then you see here you will be descending there at the top of descent, but most probably will be descending somewhere here. So let's check this. Okay, so Lenov, now we want to be at Lenov minus 70. So to put a custom waypoint, you put Lenov slash minus 70. Okay, so this is the keys that you have to press, and now you put it on top of Lenov, and here you have Lenov, which is there. And that makes more or less sense. If you put step, basically you see from there we can expect to have 10 miles final here. So now you can execute it for the time being, because it's exactly on your route, so you don't really care. It's not gonna change anything. Just remember that when you report your position to the ATC, just don't tell him Lenov 01, just tell him that you are going direct to Lenov. That's the only threat that you are encountering right now. So now, from Lenov, you can expect maybe 10 miles final, okay? So now let's check. Lenov, it tells you that you have to be flight level 360, okay? But the top of descent though will be around, it will be, I don't know, like 20 miles, no, actually from around 30 miles from the top of descent. So you'll see that it's quite a big difference. Now let's go, and we can put this 10 miles final point, and we can connect it to our Lenov 01 point. So here you see that's the tremendous shortcut, and you see we moved around 30 miles our top of descent. That's around 9,000 feet, guys. That's a lot. So now VNAV knows that at this point you should start descending. Okay, so that's something very interesting and something you should keep in mind. So now, because basically you cannot put any altitude constraint, because Lenov 01 will still be at 360. However, you see that your top of descent will be exactly at this point. So you don't do anything, because if you execute it you will definitely get rid of all these points, and you don't want that just yet, so you erase it. However, just keep in mind that your top of descent should be now over Lenov. So as soon as you reach this 105 miles ring, just ask for descent, and then you will start descending. Initially your VNAV will show you that you are getting too low on the profile, but then as soon as you're getting the shortcut, then you will see that you will be exactly on the profile. But that's about it for the shortcut anticipation at the moment. We can as well check why the top of descent was at flight level was at 105 miles, okay? Because if we put this off hook point, we put it and we connect it to Lenov 01, look how much distance we have. 110 miles more or less, that's 33,000 feet. Actually it's a bit more than that, so let me quickly calculate it. It's gonna be progress is we have 214 miles minus 101, 212 213 sorry miles, and that's gonna 113 miles, sorry, times 3, you see it's 340 more or less, and 340 times 3 make you around 102 miles, and you see that the top of descent is just a little bit after this 105 miles ring. So you see that our calculations are getting very close, and because good pilots are lazy pilots, I'd suggest you do this every flight to not get surprised, and it's always better to be a bit too low than a little bit too high. And as I said, in case anything happens after that, it's very easy. You just go on vertical speed, or you keep VNAV 1000 feet per minute until you catch back your normal profile. You always cross check altitude versus distance, because sometimes you think that you have set the VNAV correctly, however you made a mistake, and then all of a sudden you're thinking what the plane is doing. No, you should not ask this question. You should know what the plane is doing, and if the plane is doing something wrong, you should correct it by yourself. So it's always good to keep an eye on it, to cross-check throughout the whole descent, and make sure that the plane is exactly at the level you want it to be. Alright guys, thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and to like the video. It's a very great help for me, and it's very good motivation for me to know that people liked it as much as I enjoyed doing this video. So once again, thanks for watching, and see you next time for the part 2.